Welcome back, my fellow duplicants, to Oxygen Not Included. Today we're going to take infinite energy and make it even more infinite, based on your guys' recommendations over here. So, one of the main ideas, and the main idea that we're going to be tackling today, is what happens if we bring in slicksters or molten slicksters to start consuming this massive amount of carbon dioxide that we're generating down there. Look at that. That's 136 kilograms in that one tile right there. The pump can't even keep up. I'm just trying to dump it out into the atmosphere, but nope. I can't keep up with that. Now, as far as different ideas, I've had to make a flow chart because there's been so much feedback in the comments. So slicksters is one of them. And the other one is optimizing the thermal transfer between the crude oil to the petroleum. There's many different ideas down there. We're not going to look at that one today. We're going to try to just adjust one variable at a time and see how that affects the results. So we're going to step through this systematically. There's been some major changes to the steam turbine. I would like to cover that. I feel like they're still making some adjustments as that is currently not fully implemented into the game. So we're going to have to just stay tuned on that one. One of the ideas was maybe to use just a tempetizer down there. And with a little bit of automation, trickiness, we might be able to increase the temperature without needing this heat exchanger setup. So that could be simplifying this whole arrangement and maybe even make it more efficient. What happens if we use a leaky oil fissure over the pump thing down here? You know, different ideas. So while I'm only going to cover this today, you can see where we're going to go from here to see just how much power we can squeeze out of this oil. So tighten down your science hats because this stuff is going to get deep. Speaking of getting deep or maybe overflooded or overflowing, I've actually had this thing running now for a while because I've been running other experiments on the side here. So this is the one that we were working with, the cool steam vent. Speaking of which, there's actually a new mod out there that allows you to see the calculated average output of a vent or a geyser. I recommend that one. And in the theme of being completely distracted, I don't know if I would use this one in your base unless you're going to fully commit to it, but yeah, check that thing out. Ooh. Stay focused, Brothgar. All is focused. All right, so let's take a look at the reports here. What am I doing? Focus. Okay, what I was about to tell you is that much of this liquids have backed up at this point. So I have more crude oil in here than I've ever had before. So this thing is always active, but it just has nowhere else to pump because the tanks are full. So I have more crude oil than I need, I have more polluted water than I need, and I've got more petroleum than I need because I'm just, well, I'm running this generator as much as I can. So at this point, I could use a bridge, or maybe that little thingy I just showed you right there, and pipe out the extra liquid based on our rules. So you can create a bridge, and then once it's backed up, it just kind of flows out. So at this point, I would get extra water out of this thing. I would also get extra crude oil. Beautiful. Beautiful. So with all that said, this thing is running as efficient as it will ever run in this current arrangement. Therefore, the reports here I think are going to be a little bit different than what we were seeing last time. I may not have given it enough time. So you can see the power generated right here from the petroleum generator was 1,840 plus 130 from the natural gas generator. So that's 1,970 kilojoules that thing is generating. So if I actually go back a cycle right there, you can see we're getting about the same numbers. And again, right around the same numbers, over and over and over and over again. So pretty darn close to 2,000. And based on my calculation that I had last time, I was predicting a little bit over 2,000, almost 2,300 almost. So this is important because that's what we're going to measure against as we add in more slicksters. So I'm not going to change anything to how this machine is operating because it's currently operating in a very predictable way. So now I'll be able to measure just how much we get out of the slicksters that we're going to add to this. So long as I do all of the processing on the side, we'll see just what benefit those guys are going to give us. So there's two different types of slicksters that are in question. We've got just our current normal slickster, and then we have the molten slickster, which likes to live at a little bit higher temperature. The difference between the two is that the slickster takes in carbon dioxide and it outputs crude oil, whereas the molten slickster takes in carbon dioxide and outputs petroleum. Now, if my reference here is correct, then these things consume at 1 kilogram per second, but output at 500 grams a second. So the first thing I need to do is verify that that is correct. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to expand this off to the side. We'll probably have to rebuild this thing because I'm going to mod it like crazy, but let's start with this. So if we break down this wall and I just put in an airflow tile, I can let that carbon dioxide flow from one side to the other. And there we have it, a room that is 96 tiles large. That's pretty easy. All right, so why 96? Well, the maximum size of a stable is going to be 96 tiles large. If you do use something like a water lock, it'll actually use the room size of everything that's outside of here. So that's one way you can fit a lot more critters in the same amount of space because they won't escape. They don't necessarily need to be in a stable. But we're going to start with the maximum size stable here because you still need to manage the number of slicksters we have. Let's start with this. And if we need to go even more crazy than that, we'll do so. All right, so I'm going to put some equipment in here, a transit tube access point with a crossing point as well. And then I'm going to connect to that via the pipe, obviously. Okay, do I have a source of power that'll work for all of that? Yes, I do. See, that power wire is too weak. We need to make it bigger. Okay, so inside of here, I'm gonna go ahead and put down a grooming station. That'll be made out of steel. There we go. And I think it's going to be really important that I maintain a nice high temperature in here, which might mean that rather than cooling this area as much as I am, I may want to stop doing that and actually try to keep the temperature a little bit higher. All right, so here's my current setup here. You can see that I have a stable over here, 96 tiles large. This is where I'm going to put the slicksters inside of here. We got all the petroleum generators and everything over here on the left. And then the liquid is going to be flowing down and over here into the petroleum line. I'm going to start with molten slicksters. The other thing to keep in mind here is the temperature that these slicksters like to remain at is going to be kind of hot, especially if we're talking about molten slicksters, which is I think the slickster I'd like to aim for. So with that in mind, I may want to stop cooling quite as much of this equipment over here and actually try to increase its temperature a little bit higher so that the molten slicksters will be happy and we'll get more molten slicksters rather than ending up with just normal ones. So I'm going to start just working the problem here and let you guys know what's going on, and then I'll do some predictions and the calculations while that stuff's playing out. So let's start with molten slicksters. Wild. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, so I have 8 critters inside of here. They're nice and happy, and they don't require any taming at this point. They're just simply wild. Now, could you ever really find 8 molten slicksters? Or could you even grow 8, hatch out 8 molten slicksters? I don't know. If you look down here, you can see that we had one normal slickster, another normal. They're not that common. Matter of fact, as I'm looking for one down here, I see one. I have one in this map. So you can see on this wild slickster down here that the chance of a larva egg is going to be at 29%. The chance of a molten egg is going to be at 69%, and it has to do with the body temperature of the critter. You know what? That's kind of interesting. Since the body temperature is at 100 to 250, that means if we were to run the natural gas generator really, really hot like that, rather than getting polluted water, we could output that as steam, more or less. We should be able to, right? If we make it out of steel or something, which means that we would get away from the water sieve altogether. But then we'd go to another idea that you guys were talking about, which is a heat exchanger between the crude oil down here at 91 and the petroleum up there as it's up at 400, and try to balance the temperatures. You see that? I've seen that played out more, but with like volcanoes and stuff. So let's see just how, okay, what do I want to do first here? Okay, hang on. Let's start with the predictions first. Let's just see what kind of potential power we have here. Because I have carbon dioxide that's somewhere around here, CO2, and that's 509 kilograms a day, which should be consumable by a couple of molten slicksters. They should be able to eat through that. If they do indeed consume 1 kilogram per second, then I should be able to pretty much pull this almost to a vacuum up here. And that may in turn just increase the temperature. So by the end of this experiment, I should be seeing somewhere between 200 and 300 extra kilojoules generated per cycle, just from the slicksters, which altogether really isn't that huge. We're only talking about like 10-15-ish% increase, but we can get food out of them. a little bit. So maybe that alone is worth doing. And not to mention, there's many different sources of carbon dioxide throughout your base. Turning that into petroleum or turning that into crude oil and then getting food out of it as well. It's just a good strategy. One way we could introduce a little bit of heat is from this petroleum right here. Could bring it in over there. Because right now it just goes in there and it gets deleted. It's not a big deal. You know what? That would actually be a good idea. Because if you take a look at this water, it then goes through the heat exchanger down here, and the whole idea is try to keep this nice and warm. So I think if I were to pipe that over there, I could increase the temperature of on this side. Maybe keep it cool on this side. Let's mess around with it, see what happens. Put a couple of thermium pipes right here. Ooh, better yet, we'll put them right on the metal tile. All right, let's take a look at the temperature over here. Ooh, yeah, there we go. That's hot. That's 120 degrees Celsius. Perfect. That might actually keep these guys nice and happy. All right, let's see here. How are things working over here? Oh, yeah, this is kind of hot. It's not... It's still relatively decent over here, but it is quite warm over there. Look at that, 97, 100. I'm going to go ahead and enable this, and we're going to take these from wild to be tamed. So Kaya is going to come over here and actually start doing a little bit of ranching for us. Thanks for being a patron, and thanks so much for your support on the channel, by the way. So this should really increase the amount of eggs that we're going to be getting out of this ranch, which I think is one of the key benefits of even going through this. Because as we saw from the calculations, it's not really all about the power. It's really about, you know, the combination between power and food. Yeah. The right idea for what we're doing down here is probably to have a pump with a filter. So petroleum goes one direction, and then crude oil goes another direction. That way you can have a mixture of them inside of there. Obviously, the idea is to have molten slicksters because you save a step. But how really obtainable is that? So you can see the temperature of the petroleum. It's at 230 something. By the time it's leaving this area over here, it's down to 152. I used a little bit of thermium right there. Matter of fact, Deathwolf was talking about this down here in the comment section. Thermium is easier to get than niobium because, you know, you only need 5 of niobium, but you can get 100 out of it from thermium. So when you look at that from a quantity standpoint, we use 5 kilograms of niobium and then a bunch more of tungsten down here to make our thermium. So it actually does make sense to maybe use thermium throughout this build as opposed to niobium. Simply less rocket trips to get all the materials you need. However, if you look at the metal refinery, there is a thermium to niobium in the case that you wanted to make that happen. But how you get tungsten is you take wolframite and you make it into tungsten right here from the metal refinery. Electrum to gold, huh? Okay, so one more thing I'm going to do here, just to verify my experiment, is I want to know how much these slicksters are outputting. I want to make sure that I'm working with a correct reference here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pipe that into here, and then I'm just going to use a shut-off valve over here. Actually, a liquid valve, and I'll just change the number. So that way I can see how much is building up in that container per cycle, so that I can get an accurate count of what we're actually converting with our 8 slicksters up here. Once we have to reach a certain threshold down here before we can ever start to run this pump, though. I have that set to 5 kilograms. Stench Butt is taking care of these molten slicksters as well. That's a funny name. Alright, so now that we've run this for a while, you can see the heat over here is 140 degrees Celsius. Over here on the left, we're up to 103. Now, that natural gas generator's hanging in there at 85 degrees. We got a fair amount of polluted water down there too. Okay, so I'm going to add an overflow for the polluted water and the crude oil, because I think that's probably, in this situation, what I'd be doing. And same sort of deal here. If I need to dump it, I'll dump it. But this way I can measure out how much extra polluted water, how much extra crude oil I'm getting per cycle. Would you look at this pipe spaghetti? We've just about covered every tile. Just a few left. I'm sure we'll find a way to cover those as well. Alright, so there we go. The crude oil is doing its thing. Why isn't the polluted water doing its thing? Oh, that's because I'm putting it in the wrong spot. Remember how I was just talking about how simple this liquid pipe system is? Perfect. I accidentally deleted a molten slickster. Welcome back, buddy. Okay, so you can see the reproduction rate is at 17% per cycle. So that means we're going to get eggs out of these guys every 6 cycles or so. If we take a look at this, then on death, they should create 2 meat, which would actually be pretty decent. Or we get the eggs as well, which we kind of know how big those eggs are going to be. Naphtha. Why do we got some naphtha down there? What's up? Is it really getting that hot in here? That would be a yes. Yes, it's quite hot. Let's reduce this down just a little bit. Just to 3. Oh, okay. Here's what's going on. Hang on. The liquid that's going through here got so hot that it burst the pipe. How about that? And that was in part because I ended up blocking up the pipe for a little bit. So let's get away from the refined metal and just go back to... Okay, so here's something that's cool. Even though this has some water on it, it can still be pumped through the sieve. It just won't take any of the material with it. So you don't have to be... You can definitely mix the 2 liquids up here if this gets hot enough to start producing, you know, steam or water. Huh. Okay. In case it wasn't complex enough. So we can see the temperature as it's leaving now at 78 degrees. It's better. That's better. Natural gas generator is maintaining a temperature of right around 88 degrees. Woo! We are definitely not consuming more than these machines are putting out. I really don't think these molten slicksters... I really don't think the molten slicksters here are converting at the rate that I see here. I don't think that's happening. What broke? The door? The door broke. Crap. It's straight up hot in here. All right, so let's see if I can get some numbers for how much these slicksters are putting out. We'll set this to 4.7 because that's where it's currently... 4.9. That's where it's currently at. Or not. Maybe the number keeps changing. Too much heat. I keep melting the transit tube. All right, so at the beginning of the next... Oh, man, all these pipes are having... Man, it's just getting so hot. So this polluted water down here is 116 degrees Celsius. Whoa, I feel like I'm going to have to put an ice machine in this thing just to temperature control it. Oh, my. Okay, we're down to 1 tile. I would like the temperature to be like 120 over here, not 150 something. That's a little bit too much. All right, so at the beginning of this next cycle, I'm going to let it run for about, I don't know, 3 or 4 cycles or so, and then I'll count up how much petroleum has built up in this liquid reservoir. That'll give me an idea of how much I'm getting out of these guys. It's a brand new month, and because of that, there is a new Humble Monthly available. And this one's starting off really solid with Assassin's Creed Origin right there. That's a $60 game for what is a $12 subscription. If you check out what Humble Monthly is, if you're not familiar, it gives you a whole bundle of the game at the end of the month right there, and then starts you off with another one if you continue to stay subscribed. In addition to all of those games is 10% off all store purchases, which is significant. Not only that, 5% of that goes to support charities, and if you use the link in the description below, you'll also be supporting my channel as well. So thank you guys so much for your support. Hopefully you guys enjoy this Humble Monthly. Let's get back to these results and see what these slicksters have pooped out for us. Once again, we're right back to counting poop, aren't we? Some things never change. I have 496 kilograms. 496. I ran for 7 cycles. Ooh, so that brings it down to 70 kilograms per cycle across all of these slicksters, which I have 8 of. That's only 8.8 kilograms per slickster. And that is significantly less than what I thought I might be able to get out of these slicksters. And I think that has to do with the fact that, you know, that might be the number for when they do their animation, but they move around quite a bit. So they're not always sucking in more carbon dioxide, or they're not always expelling more petroleum. So these might be the numbers per animation, but the sum of all the animations gives us how much we're actually getting out per cycle. So let's try to see just how many slicksters we would actually need. So if we take this and we times this by 2, that's how much carbon dioxide we're consuming in a cycle. Per slickster, mind you. So that's 17.7 kilograms. We move back over here to the calculator, and I take a look at slicksters right here. All right, so I ran this through my calculator here to see just how many slicksters we need. This slickster is both a normal slickster and a molten slickster as well, so it outputs at 8.8 kilograms per cycle. But it consumes carbon dioxide at 17.58. So using that and balancing that out with the rest of the equipment down here so that I end up with 0 extra carbon dioxide, I would need to have 29 slicksters. That's a lot of slicksters. So here's something else that I set up. You see, I have this conveyor loader, and this is using the new conveyor or dropper right there. So I'm actually able to take the eggs that are being given off by these slicksters and just drop them into a single spot there rather than put them into a storage container. So if you wanted to incubate without an incubator, shall we say just kind of normal open air, this is a really cool way of doing it now. It doesn't require somebody to pick it up and move it over there or something like that. I had another thought, all right? So I had another thought as well. If inside of here, you put an egg cracker, okay? And that egg cracker is set up to just do something like long hair. We can get rid of long hairs. We don't need those. Or if we just wanted to get rid of larva eggs, right? We don't need those as well. And we just kind of disable this. Stop, stop, stop. Oh no. Okay, hang on. Might have to be the most industrial egg machine ever. So we're going to make that egg cracker, but we're going to make it out of steel. Bam! There we go. So now it won't melt. And what I'm going to do is just hit forever on the larva egg and forever on the long hair leg. And watch what happens. Watch what happens. This will be cool. Because what I think is going to happen is somebody's going to run in there, crack the egg, and look at this. Look at this. So this egg shell is what we have. But what about the raw egg? It's unrefrigerated, but it's in a sterile environment. And if we look at the temperature, okay, don't sweep it, guys. Don't sweep it. No! No! Stench butt. Put it down. Put it down. No! Mom Hunter, go away. Everybody moves out of here. I want to show that this is going to work. Check it out. Look at the temperature. This thing, I think, is going to cook itself in this environment. Yes, it did. It cooked itself. I kind of moved it because I thought everything was stacking on top of it. But no, look at that. We have 8,400 calories of omelet right there. And it's in a sterile environment. Isn't that cool? Molten slicksters cook their own food. Well, okay. If you destroy their babies, then the environment cooks their food. That's slightly morbid, actually. But it's still cool. Okay, so the big question here is at 8.8 kilograms per slickster, just how much power is that? Well, the calculation for that is really simple because you're consuming petroleum at 2,000 grams per second, but you're producing power at 2 kilowatts. So you get 2,000 joules for 2,000 grams, so 1 gram per joule of energy. So if you look over here, so that means each slickster is worth 8.8 kilojoules. So if we extrapolate this one out, so if we take this and we divide it by 600, this is the average wattage they're essentially producing. 14.6 watts. And that's why you need so many of them. All right, so a slightly ridiculous question, but we're going to ask it anyhow, is how in the world do we actually get 30 slicksters into the same area? Well, I think you just create a little liquid lock there. So the room is much larger than it actually is. Because we want to keep the carbon dioxide inside. Liquid seems to be a good option. And we got this really cool stuff like visco gel. Take a little visco gel, slap that right there, and then... No! Abandon! Oh, it will melt. Come on. There we go. So now the room here, it's huge. And are these glum? Well, they're glum because they're not being treated, but they're not overcrowded, even though I have a bunch of molten larva egg inside of here. So at this point, I just need more grooming stations and a whole lot more slicksters. All right, that is 29 molten slicksters. We should be able to take care of all of this carbon dioxide now. I have a ton of steam just rolling around. It's kind of I keep running into heat problems over here. All right, so let's That doesn't seem to be an issue. We'll go from those pipes to just, you know, granite pipes. That'll be fine. Oh, I might need to take some of this super coolant. You know, what would be a better idea is to build a natural gas generator in a different room. Just redesign everything. Sure, that won't take long at all. Not at all. Try to sap a little bit of heat out of this side. Come on. There we go. So many slicksters. You know what? This might be a change that they made. In that the grooming station outside of a stable doesn't work. Nobody's coming over here to run the machine. I thought the grooming station used to work even if it wasn't inside of a stable. You would simply build many stables. All right, let's see just how much food we get out of this molten larva egg here. So if we crack that bad boy open, that raw egg it's just a raw egg like normal. Unless there's two of them there. Yeah, it's just a normal dude. We stick it up here and it'll get nice and hot. Steam it. Boom. It turns into 2,800. So if you take that and you divide it by however many cycles, you get 466 calories per cycle. So gives you some sort of idea just how much food we're actually able to get out of that thing right there. Multiply that by 8. Yeah. You can keep 3 dupes up on that. Guess we got to figure out how much oxygen we can get out of it, because it seems like it'd be a fully sustainable thing so long as you get the temperatures and everything just right. So not only do we have infinite power, but we got infinite cycles as well. This just in, crude oil is the elixir of life. Not only have we obtained unlimited energy, but we have obtained immortality. Well, we're talking about dupes here. They'll probably break something eventually. But if they didn't do that, they could live forever. Whoa, that dropped the temps down quite a bit. Ooh, hang on. Okay, so if thermium is that super radiant, then I think maybe 3 of granite is the right number. It's kind of hard to figure out what that right number is. Oh, you know what? We forgot just how much food could potentially come out of a slickster if you were to kill it. Oh, correct. That's 3,200 calories. So that's 533 calories per cycle. Multiply that by the maximum stable size, and that's enough for 4 dupes. That's 4. Now, considering it's going to take 1 dupe a good portion of their cycle, you know, it's still worth it. Just like most of these ranches. We're definitely getting a little bit of power, we're getting repurposing carbon dioxide, and we're producing extra food. So it's worth it. But I don't think we're ever going to generate the amount of power that we're going to see over here. All right, so I'm going to let this run for a few more cycles, and we'll see just how much power we've gained from all of these molten slicksters inside of here. Hopefully, we're going to see that number that was pretty close to 200 to 300 extra kilojoules. If so, then everything's working correct. About as correct as it's going to get. All right, so it's been several cycles now, and nothing seems to have exploded while I was away. What do you think this report's going to be? Previous cycle was 1,916. 1,868. So that's not much more than I had last time. What? I mean, that doesn't seem right. What are you doing, slicksters? Why aren't you doing this? You're happy? You're wild? All right, well, at least the temperature seems to be working well. I have granite here, and you can see it's 113 in this area and 105 over there, so things are staying polluted. We're not creating a bunch of steam. But this has to be a ranch, because otherwise 1/3 of my current slicksters, well, you know, won't get hungry. All right, so this thing has been up and running for a while, and you can see that I now have 4 different ranches here, running a total of 32 molten slicksters. And you can see that there's still a lot of carbon dioxide in this thing. Let's take a look at the reports here. In the previous cycle, look at that. Petroleum generator was up over 2,000, so that's 2,040. Let's take a look at the previous cycle after that one. You see 1,9. The cycle before that was 1,988, where we had some more natural gas on that one. And then we had a 2,067. So that gives me an average of 2,224 kilojoules. All right, so when we do the math here, we were predicting to see potentially up to 291 extra kilojoules from slicksters. You can see that kind of right down there near the bottom. That guy right there. What we ended up getting is 254 extra kilojoules per cycle. Now, don't get me wrong, I had to tame all of these molten slicksters, so either they process a little bit faster, or maybe it just has to do with the extra space right there. But, man, it's a lot. It is a whole lot. The one benefit, though, is that there is a bunch of food here. You can see there's 162,000 calories of omelet right there. That's just cooking up all on its own right in the same area. So that's actually really handy. So let me sum up my thoughts here. The oil reservoir, obviously we know that we can tap into this, and we know that we can get extra things like extra crude oil, extra polluted water, unlimited power out of the thing. Well, if you add on slickster farms to this thing, not only can we get a little bit more power out of it, which isn't all that much, but we can get more. The real benefit here is that while we do get a little bit more power, we're actually able to generate some food. So that's actually pretty handy, especially when you stop to think about, just how much is here and how much this can support. I mean, if you have lots of duplicants, then I see that this could actually be quite useful. It's taking 3 of my dupes, all 3 of my dupes here, to really maintain this many ranches. So something to keep in mind. But there we have it. We can add slicksters to this, and yes, we do get a little bit more power. And if I remember correctly, I think it was 466 calories per slickster. So if we take that and we times that by 32, then wow, that's actually quite a bit of food. It's enough to support 14, almost 15 duplicates. Interesting. So there we have it. One idea down. That one was actually quite a bit more challenging than I was expecting, but you know what? I think it turned out pretty good there. At any rate, that's all I got time for today. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed this little episode here of Oxygen Not Included. If you got some more ideas for me, go ahead and leave them down there in the comment section below. Hopefully you guys are looking forward to the next couple of episodes as we continue to see just how much power we can squeeze out of a system like this. There's many more topics to cover, and if this looks like the channel for you, maybe consider hitting that subscribe button. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a great day. Stay awesome. Peace. Brothgar out.